Okay, let's talk about a giant in the world of personal finance, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I mean, this book has sold millions and millions of copies and basically kickstarted a financial awakening for so many people. But here's the big question, right? Is it actually a solid blueprint for building wealth? Or is it just a bunch of, well, risky, maybe even dangerous advice? We're going to break it all down.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll get into the book's most powerful ideas, the two dads story and that super simple definition of an asset. Then we're going to dive headfirst into the serious controversies and all the criticism. And finally, we'll try to answer that one big question. What is this book's real legacy?
All right, so the whole book, and I mean the entire thing, is built around this one really powerful story. It's about Kiyosaki's two dads. You've got his biological father, who he calls his poor dad. This guy was super educated, had a great job, but was always struggling with money. And then there was his best friend's dad, the rich dad, who, get this, never even finished school, but ended up being one of the wealthiest guys in town.
And the difference in how these two guys thought about money, it's like night and day. The poor dad, he was all about the traditional path. You know the drill. Go to school, get good grades, find a safe, secure job. But the rich dad, totally different playbook. He believed that what you learn about money on your own, financial literacy, is way more important than what you learn in a classroom. His whole philosophy was, you don't work for money, you make money work for you.
And really, this whole mindset shift is about escaping one thing, what Kiyosaki calls the rat race. And you probably know exactly what this feels like. It's that cycle, right? You work harder, you get a raise, but then your expenses magically go up too. You buy a bigger house, a nicer car, and suddenly you're just as trapped, just as dependent on that next paycheck as you were before. It's a treadmill you can't get off of.
So, the million-dollar question is, how do you actually get out of the rat race? Well, according to the Rich Dad philosophy, it all boils down to one deceptively simple lesson. You have to understand the core difference between an asset and a liability.
And this is where Kiyosaki's genius really shines, in his simplicity. He just cuts through all the confusing financial jargon you hear. For him, an asset is, well, it's anything that puts money in your pocket. That's it. Simple. It's all about cash flow.
And on the flip side, it's just as straightforward. A liability? That's anything that takes money out of your pocket. The stuff that just drains your bank account month after month.
So let's look at what that means in the real world. Assets are things like, say, a rental property that brings in monthly rent, or stocks that pay you dividends. Liabilities? That's your mortgage payment on the house you live in, your car loan, and especially that pesky credit card debt. So the whole game plan becomes super clear. Buy assets, avoid liabilities.
And the whole reason, the entire goal of buying all these assets is to build what's called passive income. See, your job, that's active income. You have to show up and trade your time for money. If you stop working, the money stops. But passive income, that's the money your assets make for you, even when you're sleeping. And here's the magic formula. True financial freedom happens when your passive income is bigger than your monthly expenses.
Okay, so all of this builds up to the book's core philosophy, which is really about completely shifting how you think about creating wealth in the first place.
This right here, this is basically the mantra of the entire book. It's about making a fundamental shift, moving from being an employee who gets a paycheck to becoming an owner and an investor. The goal is to make your money your employee, an employee that works for you 24/7 and never asks for a day off.
Kiyosaki actually has a diagram for this. He calls it the cash flow quadrant. So picture this. On the left side, you've got employees and the self-employed. Both of these groups are basically trading their time for money. But on the right side, you have business owners who own a system that makes money, and investors who have their money making money. And the big takeaway from Rich Dad is that real, true financial freedom, it's only found on that right side of the quadrant. Okay, but let's be real. How do you actually start buying assets when you're just trying to pay the bills? Rich Dad's answer is a single ironclad rule. You have to pay yourself first. And what that means is, the second you get your paycheck, before you pay rent, before you pay for groceries, before anything else, you take a chunk of that money and you put it straight into your investment bucket. It's a huge mental shift. You're making your own future wealth the #1 priority, not the last.
And when you think this way, it completely redefines what wealth even means. It's not about the six-figure salary of the fancy sports car. According to Kiyosaki, wealth is time. It's freedom. Think about it. If you stopped working today, how long could you survive? That number, that's your wealth. The real goal isn't just about getting rich, it's about becoming free. Okay, so
All that mindset stuff is incredibly powerful, right? It's inspiring. But this is where the whole story takes a sharp turn. Because for all its motivational power, Rich Dad, Poor Dad is also one of the most controversial and heavily criticized finance books ever.
And honestly, this comment from a Reddit user pretty much nails the main criticism. The mindset part is good, but the practical advice, well, stupid is a strong word, but a lot of people think it's questionable at best and downright dangerous at worst.
Yeah, critics have a whole list of what they call awful advice from the book. He talks about things like dumping money into super risky penny stocks or trying to flip foreclosed houses with no money down. I mean, these are things that could literally wipe out a beginner. And then there's the really controversial one. He suggests people should join a multi-level marketing company, an MLM, just to learn how to sell. That piece of advice alone has drawn a ton of criticism. And that connection to MLMs? It apparently runs pretty deep. A lot of critics argue that the book's meteoric rise to fame wasn't exactly organic. It was heavily pushed by big MLM organizations. The theory is that these companies had their members buy the book in bulk because its whole "be your own boss" message was the perfect sales pitch to recruit new people. And the critiques don't just stop at the advice in the book. They go straight to the author himself. A lot of people seriously question if Rich Dad was even a real person, or just a character Kiyosaki made up. The harshest critics go even further. They call him a fraud who got rich by selling books and seminars on how to get rich, not by actually doing the things he talks about in the book.
So where does all this leave us? On one hand, you have this book that genuinely changed the way millions of people think about money. But on the other hand, it's accused of being full of terrible advice and maybe even built on a lie.
And this is really the central paradox of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The book's incredible value is that it's a catalyst. It's a wake-up call that can shake you out of that rat race mindset. But the danger, the real danger, is that someone new to all this might read it and take his specific strategies as a literal step-by-step instruction manual. And that could lead to financial disaster.
You know, maybe the best way to think about this book is that it's all about the why of becoming financially free, but not so much the how. It is fantastic at lighting a fire under you and getting you motivated to take charge of your money. But once that fire is lit, you really need to go find other, more reliable, and frankly, safer sources to learn the actual how-to.
So in the end, the question is still out there. Is Rich Dad, Poor Dad a timeless, essential guide that opened the door to wealth building for regular people? Or is it more of a gateway drug, something that introduces you to an exciting new mindset, but then points you down a path filled with risky seminars and questionable gurus? That's the debate, and it's one that's not ending anytime soon.